TDD Practices. So here we are going to talk about characteristics of good test, and we'll talk about what is and why you want to use TDD, and we'll go through some very simple development cycle, which is red, green, refactor cycle, and we are going to see some best practices doing TDD. We'll talk about some anti-patterns in TDD, and then a couple of testable code, writing testable code best practices. So characteristics of good test. So it should run fast. So quick setup, quick run, and quick teardown. And the test should be able to run in isolation, which means it should not rely on data or state used or modified or created by other tests. Individual tests should be able to run in isolation. And use data that makes them easy to read and understand, and use real data whenever possible. That makes sense, right? So you can get copies of production data if you can, and then you can actually run that the production-like data as a test data. And test should be repeatable. It means they should return same result each time it runs. Goals of well-written test. So test should be, readable by others, just like your target code should be readable by others. Should serve as simple client code for others. So by looking at your test code, they can see how your target code could be used and accessed. Should serve as a specification. We talked about this one already. So if you follow the pattern of should something when something is given kind of pattern, it kind of gives you a sense of the specification of the behavior that is expected from your target class, or target the target code. Should test what they are supposed to test and no more. So you do not want to actually add any more code than is necessary. So you do not want to do anything beyond what is required in the specification, in the requirements. Not tightly coupled with the target code. And should follow good coding principles, such as a single responsibility and all those things, should be also followed in writing testing code. So what is and why TDD? So TDD stands for test-driven development. It's a software development process that relies on the repetition of a very short development cycle of red, green, refactor. So, you're going to actually go through the multiple cycles of red, green, refactor, as opposed to writing big chunk of code at a time. Okay? And requirements are turned into very specific test cases. Then the software is improved to pass the new test only, as opposed to writing software beyond what is specified in the requirements. So why you want to do TDD? It helps you focus on design. In fact, it's more than testing. So Uncle Bob, who is a very famous person in agile world, he said the act of writing a unit test is more of an act of design than the verification. It is also more an act of documentation than the verification. So of course it does verification, but what is more important is actually guiding your design of your software, and also provides documentation. It helps you to think from customer requirements, because before you're writing the target code, you think about how it will be used from, let's say, the customer, meaning in this case, by customer I meant the person who's using your code. Okay, so the act of writing a unit test closes the remarkable number of feedback loops. It helps you to build better written and better tested software. So it helps you write the testable code. Okay? So basically, because you are thinking about testing first, your target code is becoming a testable code. If you're writing your target code first, then you don't think about the testing. And that's the reason that a lot of legacy code is not working well, because it doesn't think about the testing first. Okay, development cycle is something we talked about. It's a repeat of red, green, refactor cycle. So basically, red means you write failing test first, and then you write the target code, okay, to correct the test failure. And once you got the green, and then you're going to refactor. Okay, so for each red-green refactor cycle, you want to add a few lines of functional code, typically less than 10 before rerunning test. So the whole idea of TDD is you make as small step as possible. So you do not want to continue, or you do not want to actually go beyond the small number of lines of code that you actually add and before you actually going through another cycle. Typically, in terms of the lines of code, we are talking about less than 10. In terms of duration, it should be less than 2 to 5 minutes. Okay, and if you are becoming more fluent in TDD, then it could be a bit longer because you're actually making less number of mistakes. Okay, so the duration could be longer, but in general, you want to actually make the smallest possible step. Okay, so that you can just build up when you make a mistake, it's a lot easier to get back to your previous working state when you're actually making a very small step each time. Okay, best practices. So only specify what is important. Okay, and again, make small steps and solve things as simply as possible. Get to the green state as possible. So that's the reason I demonstrated in your target code, you just kind of return hard-coded value to get to the green state as fast as possible. Again, follow 2 to 5 minute rule. So each red-green refactor cycle should not take more than 2 to 5 minutes. Perform refactoring after each passing test. So once you got the passing test, that is the best opportunity to perform some refactoring of the target code. And make testing code expressive and readable. Again, test should serve as a pseudo documentation. So again, if you follow this pattern of BDD, should result this when XYZ occurs, or when something is given, this happens, something like that. Anti-patterns, the free write. So this is the anti-patterns of writing test code. Free write. Rather than write a new test method for another feature, or new assertion writes along an existing test. You do not want to do that. You want to actually create a separate test method. The loudmouth clutters the console with the diagnostic messages, logging messages, and other chatter, even when passing. So you do not want to use all the system out println statement in your test code. The stranger, the test case that doesn't even belong in the unit test is really testing a separate object. Okay, so it should not be in your particular test class. The local hero, a test case that depends on something specific to the development environment, passes on one machine and fails on another. So this violates the repeatability aspect of your testing. So testing should work on any machine, any operating environment. Okay, so it should be repeatable, which means it should not depend on any environment variables and things like that. Okay, and writing testable code best practices. So do not use a singleton class because it's impossible to mark a singleton. Get dependencies to be injected. So this is the dependency injection, where you get your dependencies to be injected rather than you create your dependency object yourself. If you create your dependency object yourself in your code, then it's impossible to mark it, meaning it's impossible to test. So if you're writing again, test the code first, then you are going to avoid this kind of gotchas. Okay, so we're going to actually do string calculator and movie rental application exercise and exercise 1, 2. Okay, so again, I'm going to actually demonstrate it and then I'm going to let you guys do the lab. So the string calculator start. So again, take a look at the readme.txt file. So this has a mandatory requirement and we have optional requirement. Okay? We're going to actually focus on mostly the mandatory requirement. From this project, I recommend you guys to use version control system. Okay, whether it is the JIT or Subversion or CVS, whatever, the version control system you have, use it. Okay, in fact, the solution project is actually version control with the JIT. Okay, so when I'm actually doing this demonstration, I'm going to actually use JIT. Okay, So create a simple string calculator. So this is the mandatory requirement. Create a simple string calculator with a method of add string input. Okay. Basically what it does is this. So when the empty string is given, the add method should return 0. When the string number it contains, meaning its input is 1 or 2, then the add method returns just 1 or 2. And I'm going to actually read up to this point, and then we'll do the lab. Okay. And then we'll come back with this requirement. When the two-number string with a comma delimiter, such as 1, 2 or 2, 3 is given, the add method should return sum of these string values. So it should return 3 and 5. Okay. So if you take a look at the main package and the test package, we have com.jpassion.tdd and com.jpassion.tdd on the test. So we're going to actually write the testing code first. Okay. So we are going to write new. We are going to write a class. So this is the string calculator. String calculator test. Okay, so again, I want to use this guy. So here, let's actually create a test method. So test method. So the first thing we want to do is we want to return 0 when the empty string is given. So should return value 0 when empty string is given. Okay, so now we are going to actually create our target object, which is a string calculator. So we're going to say string calculator and string calculator and new string calculator, like this. Okay, and we do not have string calculator class. So at this time, this is the good time to create string calculator class. So here, string calculator, and we want to create under src main, and Java. Okay, so we have a string calculator. That is a target class. Again, we want to actually have these two classes side by side so that we can see what is going on both. Okay. So here, what we want to do is we're going to actually call add method. Okay, right? So string calculator add method. So when the empty string is given, it should return 0, right? So we are going to assert that, and this value should equal to 0. Okay, and so we are going to add this static method first. Okay, now we don't have any add method in our target class, so we're going to create method of string. Okay, so this is the string class. It should return int, and this is add method, and this is the string, so we're going to call it input, and for now it's going to return 0. Okay, so again, this is a practice where you want to make as small steps as possible. Okay, so save the change, and we can see it succeed. Sometimes the infinite test is actually giving this kind of problem, but it takes some time. Okay, so in the case, you can just run the test. Oops, yes, run the test. Then it succeeded, and then I think it goes away at some point. Okay, all right. So we now have succeeded of creating the target class that returns 0 when empty string is given. Okay. Okay. All right. So now let's just delete the empty spaces. Okay. Now let's actually take a look at the our next requirement. So we just meet the first requirement. When empty string is given, the add method returns 0. So that's perfectly fine. Now, when the single number string such as 1 or 2 is given, the add method should return the value of it. Okay? All right, so now we're going to write another test. So should return return value when a single number string is given. Okay, so here we are going to create a string calculator object again. So this is a good time to do the refactoring of the testing code. So we're going to actually have a before, okay, and the setup. And here we are going to have this guy move up. Yeah, I haven't figured out, when I do actually the formatting, it actually remove this public void. It actually wrap it, and that actually, so when I actually unfold, then it actually display the public void as well. So for example, if I do folding, collapse all, it does have this public void. So that's the reason I actually have a public void as part of the test method. Okay. But I wasn't able to actually figure out how I can, So go back here. So this, okay. So I created a string calculator, and it has to be a local field rather than local variable. So I'm gonna again use the source, and so I have to actually select this guy. Usually I have to move the cursor, and then I can actually use so source, and I'm actually looking for move it as a local field. Source. Oh, here you go. It's on the refactor. Okay, so convert local variable to field. Okay, so I have string calculator as a local field so that it could be used in another method. Okay, all right. So now we just did the refactor so that we create a string calculator object in before method rather than in each of these test method. So this time, what should happen is, again, I'm gonna just copy this code, and then I'm going to move it down here. So assert that if I provide 1, then it should return 1. Okay, and if I save the change, it will fail because it's returning 0. Okay, you can certainly again take a look at the. By the way, if you want to actually run just a single method, you move your cursor and then Alt Shift XT, then you should actually see your JUnit test is being run on that particular method. So expected 1 but return 0. So certainly not good. Okay, so we need to address that. So the way we can address that is we check whether the is empty or not, right? So what we can do is if input is empty, then we return 0, right? Okay. Otherwise, we are going to convert this method, this input into the int. So basically, we are going to use integer, and parse int, and this is input, and we are going to return this guy. Okay. All right. So let's save it, and it succeeds. Okay. So we were able to, meet this requirement, and for the sake of the more robust testing, we are going to have another method of this guy, and this time we are going to use maybe number 5 and should return 5. Okay, and again save the change to make sure it is still working. Okay, now let's take a look at the readme.txt file. So we actually meet this requirement. When a single number string is given, the add method now returns 1 or 2. Okay, now let's go to the third one. So when two number string with a comma delimiter, such as 1 and 2 or 2.3 is given, it should actually return sum. Okay, so I'm going to actually do up to this point, and I'll let you guys actually do this exercise up to this point, and then we'll move on. Okay, so now let's have another testing method. Okay, so I'm going to just copy this guy. So this one should be return sum when two number string is given. So in this case, 1.2 should return 3, and 5.6 should return 11. Okay, and save the change, and of course it should fail. Okay, so now we're going to actually address this failure. So basically what we need to do is we need to use a delimiter of comma, and then we are going to have this guy as a string array, and then we are basically add those two values. Okay, all right, so here what we can do is now this is a case that we have single element. Actually we don't know yet, right? So in this case we have to actually create the string array. So string array, and I'll say number strings, and we are going to create input, and if you split with some kind of in this case comma, which is the delimiter, then it should actually return the number strings, right? Okay, and then basically we are going to, in this case, return. So this is a 2 number. So basically we're going to actually take the simplest possible solution. So we're going to actually return and number parse, so integer parse int, and number string, the first one, and then we are going to add and integer parse int, and here number strings, like this. Okay, and let's see whether we have let's actually see whether this one actually works or not. Okay, even for the single. So let's actually have this one. It failed. Okay, so let's see actually what failed. So we have two cases. Yeah, the single failure is obviously failed, and the single number failed, and the 2 numbers, even 2 numbers actually failed. Right? So let's see what this guy is. It's supposed to be expected 3 but returns 2. And this one is supposed to expected 1 but was 2. It's, yeah, so obviously so what we can do is we can actually check whether that is in fact the whether the string contains the comma as a splitter. So again, we're going to actually try the simplest case. Input contains. By the way, there is no single solution for your code, so I mean you don't have to actually follow exactly what I'm doing. So if it contains a comma, then we are gonna do this, and then otherwise it should return like this. Okay, so let's see whether that works. Okay, so still failed. Let me whenever it failed, always actually go to so let's actually ignore this guy. We have to import, save the change. Okay, so this case worked still, okay, with this logic. So we can tell the problem we have is this guy, right? So let's actually try with the single test case, okay? And let's remove Control D, and it failed. And the reason it failed is, let's take a look at the what failed. So expected 3 but was 2. Okay, so expected 3 but yeah, so let's see. So if input contains comma, which is the case, we actually you see we have a number string 1, 0 and 1, so obviously that's not right. So let's save the change. Now it succeeded. Okay, so we have now all 3 cases succeeded. Now, this is a time that, we want to actually see if there is anything we can refactor. So every time you have a succeeding test case, you want to see whether you can refactor the code. All right, so the things we can refactor is, you can see we are actually duplicating these integer parsing things, okay? So why don't you actually extract a method from this guy? So Alt-Shift-M, or I'm going to show you how you do that. Select refactor and extract method. Extract, where is extract method? Oh, yeah, I have to actually choose the whole thing. Okay, and refactor and extract method. So Alt-Shift-M. So I want you to remember Alt-Shift-M from this point on, right? So I'm going to use the the shortcut key from this point on. So I'm going to select this guy and Alt-Shift-M, and we're going to actually make string to int, something like that. Okay. So the we are going to now use this is, yeah, so whenever you actually have some issues, I don't want to actually make a string to send the array, so that's not the right way of doing it. Okay, so you can actually get it back. Okay, so basically instead of choosing this guy, I'm going to actually choose this guy, which just return, which is actually passing at the string object rather than things like it's actually getting the array object. Okay, so here, so again you can see I'm just receiving a single string. Okay, so I'm going to just call it toInt. That's probably a bit simpler, toInt. Okay, so now we should be able to use this guy, toInt. Like this. Okay, so this is a little bit simpler. Okay, and okay, so let's see whether we can, you can actually do a bit more refactoring. Okay, so let's actually move forward. If you're not sure if it requires any more factoring, we can just move on and we can always come back. Okay. Okay, so maybe this is a good time for you guys to actually finish up to this point rather than one single giant step. So I'm going to give you guys about the 10 minutes up to this full requirement. Okay. Let me resume. By the way, I did not demonstrate the version control, so let me actually just do that. So I'm going to actually use TDD Practice, and I'm going to samples Maven, and the one that I'm working on right now is the string calculator TDD start. Okay, so CD string TDD start. So the first thing I want to do is JIT. Yeah, already provided the JIT ignore, so you don't have to actually do anything. Oh, so it looks like I already have JIT here. Okay, so actually that is, yeah, I didn't want to actually have a JIT. So basically what you do is JIT init. Okay, it looks like I already have it. So let me see if I have a JIT log anything. Okay, so I don't have any. So okay, so basically now what you do is JIT add. You add everything, and then you're gonna say JIT JIT commit, right? -m as initial code for in this case I handle the when two numbers provided, it returns. Oops. Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't actually enable the view. Sorry about that. Yeah, so basically you're going to actually add a JIT init to make this guy as a JIT project. And then you're going to say JIT add that comma to make all your code to be staged then you're going to say JIT commit -m, then you provide the commit statement, returns sum. Okay, right? I mean, this is a good practice to kind of version control, because we are making small changes moving forward. Okay, if you're not familiar with the JIT, don't worry about it. You can just keep making changes. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, so I have to pause. Okay, so next requirement is that, when multiple number string with a comma delimiter, such as 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2 dot, 3 dot, comma is given, the add method should return some 6 and 10 respectively. Okay. All right, so let's write testing code. So I'm going to copy this guy. Return sum when multiple number string is given. So in this case, 3 should return 6. Okay, so let's try to see whether this one works. Okay, so it failed, right? Obviously, it doesn't handle it. Okay, so what we need to do is now, in this case, instead of actually doing this, we now actually go through these num strings, and then we need to add all those values, right? So here, instead of doing this, we are going to have a for loop. Okay, so we're going to have a for loop for. So here string and string, and here input. Okay. And I'm sorry, the number strings. Let's actually remove this guy code. Okay, number strings, and then we are going to add values. So here we're going to have maybe int sum should start with a 0, and then we are going to add a sum equal, and now we're going to actually to int string. Yeah, so instead of string, we're going to actually say number string, which is more descriptive. So here I'm going to use number string, and then let's see whether that works. Okay, so that failed somehow. So the reason is we have not returned, so we have to return sum, and let's see whether that works. Okay, so that's successful. Now let's see whether we can refactor this code. Okay, so what we have is that we have the computation of the sum. So this could be actually extracted into a method. Why don't you actually extract this guy? Alt Shift M. So whenever you have some logic that does not really describe what it does, if you see this code, it's rather difficult to see, what it does. Okay, so that is a great reason. That is a great reason to, the unclear purpose of the code is a great reason to make it a method. So method, you have an opportunity to describe it in a way you want. So I'm going to extract this guy to a method. So Alt Shift M, and I'm going to call it, create a compute sum. Okay, so that is more descriptive. It's a lot more descriptive than this logic. So when people actually see your code, it has the it check whether it's empty or not. In fact, you could even actually have this guy as validate, check whether it's empty or not. Okay, and you might actually do that later on. Okay, so we have a number strings, and then so basically it describes what it does, and then it returns. Okay, so in this case, instead of having these 2 lines of code, we are going to just return this guy, and we'll just remove this guy. Okay, and we could even actually have this guy to be as an argument. So we can just, yeah, by the way, I actually violate the rule. So you make a small change, right? And then you save the change to make sure testing still works. Okay, so testing still works, right? So I'm going to have this logic to be replacing this guy, and then see whether it works. I save the change, and you can see this code is not being used, so it is safe to delete this line. Okay. Oops. What it is? Oh, number string. Okay, so that certainly is not right. So I meant to actually say use this guy. Oh, what am I doing? Something's not right. So whenever you're not comfortable, so let's see whether this one works. Yeah, okay, so this one still works. So, and this one still works. So in this case, we perform the splitting of the input. We create an array, and then, oh, so I meant to actually have this guy. Copy, replacing this one. Okay, and save the change, and it still works. And this line is not needed, so I'm going to delete this line, save the change, whether things are still working fine. And let's see. Oops. Okay, so things are simpler, at least in the top add method. So if it is empty, we return 0, and then we check whether it contains comma. And if it contains a comma, it basically says that it is in fact a multi-number string. So we're going to call compute sum with input string of like this. Okay. So let's see whether that, and then for compute sum, basically we're creating a sum here. Okay. Let's see whether we can actually refactor this guy into lambda. Okay. So we are going to see whether we can actually do these things. Okay, so here we're going to say number strings, and we have to create the array. We're going to create the list object. Okay, so we're going to actually create the list of instead of doing that, we are going to arrays as list. And then we pass number strings. So now it actually created as the list object. So now we should be able to use a stream method. Okay, and then from the stream we can convert the each number string into int type. So we're going to use a map and map into. And what gets passed is the function object, and the parameter argument of the function object, in this case number string. The number string, you're going to actually name it in any way you want, right? Number string, and then basically we are going to generate the int. So in this case 2 int, and should be number string like this. And then we are going to sum, and then we have to return this value like this. Okay, and see whether that works, and that works. Okay, so basically we are converting into array object, and then we call streams, and then we perform the mapping into int, then we create a sum. Okay, so usage of streams and lambda is actually making things a lot easier to read rather than this, the for loop. Do you agree with that? Okay, so that is, I'm going to just leave this code here just for the comparison. So we just use a lambda, and let's see if we have any other way that we can refactor. So here we are just checking whether it contains comma or not. But we should be able to actually, so input split. Yeah, so input split, this is not really good. It doesn't really give you any sense of what goes on, right? So we want to actually convert it into maybe a remove delimiter or something like that. Okay. So why don't you actually do this? In fact, let's see. If we do not have, if it doesn't contain comma, it's a single. Let me see whether that is. If it is split, that does actually. Okay, so maybe this is not a good time to actually refactor for the dealing with the delimiter, because later on we are going to actually have another delimiter. So that is basically another opportunity to deal with the delimiter. Okay. Okay, so we did this. So we satisfy the requirement of this guy. When multiple number string is given with a comma delimiter, we're just returning a sum. Okay, so next one is in fact the another delimiter of new line. So allow the usage of new line / \n as the delimiter. So this one and this one should return 3 and 6 respectively. Okay. So let's see, we are going to add another method, another test method. Should return sum when new line is used as delimiter. Yeah, as additional, because we still want to support comma. Okay, so in this case, what we want to test is, let's actually test this guy first. 2 should return 3. Okay, and of course this will fail because it doesn't know how to deal with the /n, \n as a new delimiter. Okay. So what happens in this case is that we need to so this logic is not going to work anymore. Okay, this one should work. We should be able to use delimiter like /n. This one should work fine with split, because if you take a look at the split Java documentation, if you take a look at the Java documentation by pressing Shift F2, then Shift F2, you should see the Java documentation of the split. And split is taking the regular expression. Not this one. I was actually looking at the Java documentation. Yeah, so here, if you take a look at the split, yeah, it's actually taking regular expression. Okay, so this one should work fine, but this logic is not working fine. So this might be a bad, this might be a good time to think about refactoring. We need to actually have a way of detecting, removing all delimiters. Okay. So why don't you actually do something like, instead of contains x, we are going to actually remove. We're going to actually have another method. So we probably want to actually use here remove. So what we want to is string array and number strings, and then we are going to call, let's say, remove delimiter, and then pass input like this. Okay, and then we should be able to do this. We'll just remove this guy and we'll just return. And here we want to actually handle the case of removing a delimiter, even if it is actually the single number string case. So we're gonna just remove this guy. We're gonna just format it. Okay. So if you actually have a way of figuring out of removing all the delimiters, okay, and then create a number string. That's exactly what we want here, right? So we're gonna actually create a method, remove delimiters, and it should return the string of array, string of arrays. Okay, so we're gonna actually create remove delimiters. Okay, So let's see whether it actually returns. So in this case, we're gonna just return. So in this case, let's see how we can remove the delimiters. So in this case, if input string contains, so let's actually see what we can do is if we should be able to have a string and number strings, and we should be able to actually use input split like this with this the delimiter array, delimiter regular expression. By the way, this might be a good time to make this one as a constant. So let's do the refactor, extract the constant, and this is the default delimiters. Okay, all right, so default delimiters. And let's see what we have is, oh yeah, we should actually return, yeah, we should actually see something like, return. So when we split with the default delimiters, okay, it should actually return some integer array, and that integer array we are going to, oh, so we don't actually do these things. Compute sum, and then we are going to just use, so here, we are going to just use remove delimiters. So that is the logic of removing all the delimiters. And then we can just remove this guy, right? Okay, so things, oh, so it works. So, basically, when we remove delimiters using split, right, whether this is in fact a case where we have a single integer or not, it will create the correct array, okay? Now, we are actually using, so let's see whether, it's certainly simpler, right? This is actually simpler than in our previous code. So basically, we check whether it's empty string or not. And then, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, actually, I want to actually use this guy as remove delimiters. This is the one that I want to actually use, right? Okay, save the change. Oh, remove. Oh yeah, not string, yeah. Save the change. Okay, so we basically remove the delimiters, and it creates the array of integer, the array of the string, and then we call compute string, and then we basically compute the sum. Okay, yeah. So this is actually a lot simpler than in our previous case. Right? Okay. So let's see what is our next case. How about this? So in this case, if it is empty, I'm wondering whether that could be also handled with this guy. If it is empty, empty string is going to be split with the default parameters. That should actually return, the 0 values, right? So in that case, compute sum, it probably doesn't have, it has a 0 basically entry. So let's see whether this one will work. That worked. Oh, that didn't work. So let's see what it failed. Yeah, so it probably handled the number format exception. That is a case that was empty string. Okay, so that's a regression failure. So we can actually change it back. Okay. And save the change. Okay, so we are now in the success testing stage. So we'll probably take a look at this guy later on again. Okay. All right. So let's see. Let's compute some in return delimiters and compute some. So this code is a lot more descriptive, right? It basically remove the delimiters and then we are going to compute sum. Okay, so that's much better. So let's take a look at the next one. Okay, so next one is when the negative number is given, the add method return runtime exception with a message of negative number is not allowed with the first negative number. So if this number is given, then it should throw an exception of negative number is not allowed and the first negative number. Okay, so let's take a look at that exercise. So we're gonna actually write the code. So here basically you're gonna copy and throw should oh yeah, one more test we want to do is, let's just this guy. We're gonna actually try to see whether this case also works. Assert that you might want to actually create a new method, or in this case I'm gonna just have another line because this is kind of relevant to this case as well. So maybe we can use a comma like this, and in this case it should return 6 and it should work as well, right? So this is kind of similar case of this one, usage of delimiters, two different delimiters. Okay, so we're gonna actually try this one. In our case, should throw runtime. Is that runtime exception or number? Yeah, runtime exception. Okay, so should runtime exception when negative number is given. Okay, so here we're gonna try -1, and and also we want to make sure. So we're gonna actually use expected first, expected, and the runtime exception class object. Okay. And we don't even have to call assert that, or we could. Okay, so in this case, it should return, it should actually throw a runtime exception. And let's save the change, and this will fail because we don't actually check the negative number. So here we are going to actually check the negative number. So where is a good place to try this? So this might be a good place to try. We can check whether once you perform the parsing int to convert int. If it is a negative value, then we can throw an exception here, right? Okay, so that's maybe what we need to do. So we are going to, if this is negative value, then we are going to throw new runtime exception, some message. Okay. And then otherwise we're going to just return okay, so let's save the change, and that is successful. Okay, the next requirement is it should actually display some message. We want to actually make sure the message is in fact being returned correctly. Okay, that is actually the time that we are going to actually use the rule. So again, we're going to actually try to rule public expected exception, and the new expected exception none. And then we are going to have test method, import the class, and we're going to actually copy this guy and move this guy into below. And here, throw exception with negative name is given, exception with message. Okay, and so here we need to check we need to check expected exception. Expect class is runtime exception class, and then expected exception and expected message this guy, and should be negative number not allowed, and also the first negative number should be, in this case, -1. Oops, yeah, -1. Yeah, should be, you can just say -1 here. Okay, and let's save the change. And it failed because it didn't really actually, it actually sending some message rather than this value. So we are going to copy this guy, negative numbers, and here it should be plus and int. In this case, yeah, so it should be, yeah, so this, yeah, we're actually using input here in many places. So this is not really input, it's basically, it is the number string. Yeah, so let me use the refactor. So here I'm going to just use Alt-Shift-R, so I'm going to change it number string, okay, and that should be the same one here, okay, and let's save the change. Okay, so it failed, so let's see why it failed. So here I'm going to see, just select that method, Alt-Shift-XT, and you can see what's happening here. So here, message containing, so expected test to throw an exception. Throw and then throw instance of runtime exception and exception of the message string, negative numbers not allowed. I think that's what we did. So let's see. Yeah, so it should actually runtime, you throw runtime exception, message is negative number not allowed, -1, and then string calculator add -2, and then so this one is number string and parse int if it is so negative number is not allowed. Okay, so let's actually ignore this test and to see whether we are at least, the things are working. Okay, so let's save the change. Okay, so everything is working fine even with this change, right? Okay, so everything is working fine, but this one is the one that caused the problem. So I think it's highly likely that the message is not right. So let's actually just try to use the simple message. So I'm going to just, instead of this number, I'm going to say just without -1, and here without this guy. And we have, okay, so no space at the end. Okay, save the change. Oh, that still failed. So somehow we are not actually, so let's actually see what is the error. T and should throw runtime exception with the message. So the failure is that expected test to throw an instance of Java lang runtime exception and expected exception with a message yeah, so basically it seems like it's saying we we did this one. So it's definitely throwing an, what is this case? It's definitely throwing an exception. So yeah, so when we do comma this guy and save, and it works fine. So exception is definitely thrown, but the message is not right. So new runtime exception with a negative number not allowed, but somehow yeah, that's interesting. I mean, everything seems fine. Okay, so at this point, we're gonna actually pass this guy and then move on to the next, okay? And we'll figure things out. The next one is when the number is bigger than 1,000, then we want to ignore. So for example, if we have 2,1005, 5 is given, it should return 7. So this 1005 is supposed to be ignored, okay? Okay, so this could be in fact the, so what we could do is, if you're using Lambda, we can actually use a filter, okay? So, you know, here after converting to int, then you can use a filter, and filter is that the number is, it should be number is less than 1,000, okay? So yeah, we haven't even written the code, right? So okay, so let me just remove this guy, right? Make sure everything is still working, and let's actually write the code. So here the code we have is, I'm gonna just copy this guy. Should return sum. Return sum with number greater than 1,000 is ignored. Okay, so should return sum with a number greater than 1,000, numbers greater than 1,000 are ignored, or something like that. So here I'm going to actually have 2,000, and it should return 4, and of course it should fail. It does return 2004 instead of just 4, right? So we are gonna actually, in this case, in Lambda, we're gonna actually have a filter. So here dot filter, and the predicate is gonna be number is and the number is less than 1,000. And let's see whether that works. Okay, so now it works. Okay, so basically we are filtering out any numbers that are greater than, well actually in this case the filter is that we are selecting the number that is, you know, that is actually less than and equal. So I should actually say equal 1,000. Okay, and save. This is in fact the binary, you know, the boundary case. So we might in fact have 1,000. So have another statement here, 1,000. So this case, because you know 1,000 is not the greater than 1,000, so we in this case it should actually return 1,004, right? So let's save the change, and it still works. So this is a boundary case. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna let you do this exercise. I'm gonna give you guys about 20 to 25 minutes. In the meantime, I'm gonna actually figure out what's going on with this guy. Okay. All right, so let's, yeah, I know what I'm doing wrong. So in this case, when I'm using rule, I'm not supposed to have this guy. Okay, yeah, so that was the problem. So I'll save the change. Now it works fine. Okay, so yeah, my problem is actually copying this code and then forgot to remove this guy. Okay, all right. Yeah, actually, I wanted to cover of the refactoring. So I didn't like this two statement here, right? So I like to have this guy to be handled inside the remove delimiters. So inside the remove delimiters, you know, we could actually have this guy to be moved up, moved down here. And then if it is 0, then basically we can just return, you know, the empty string array. So here we can create the new the string object, the new string like this, how can I actually create a string? New string array. Oh, maybe. Okay, so basically, if it is empty, then I can return empty string array object, and that should work exactly the same. Okay, so here basically my code is basically with this single line of code, remove delimiters and then compute sum. So having this guy to be inside in remove delimiters is probably making more sense, right? Because it has really nothing to do with add logic. Even this guy, when it's empty, so in this case, I can actually even have refactored into another method. Return empty array when input is empty. So this is probably more descriptive than it's a bit more descriptive than this logic. Okay, so in this case, yeah, maybe not. Let me just get back. I didn't like that. So this is still not that much descriptive. So this could be actually refactored into another method that actually kind of more descriptive. Other than that, another thing, so for now we are using array of string, and usually I don't like using array of string. I usually like to use the a list of something, because that is in fact the more type safe. Okay, so let's actually use array of strings. So we move here. I'm going to return, let's see, so input and remove delimiters. So usually what you want to do is you don't want to actually change existing code. Okay, so when you do refactor, for example, if you want to actually change code, you can actually create another method. Okay, so I'm going to actually copy this guy, and then I'm going to say remove delimiters and return list of string. So it's going to be list string like this, and here we are going to, instead of empty, we are going to create the new array list, new array list string, and this is going to be empty like this. And let's see, also you have to import list of this guy, and then in the split, so I am going to use the input split. Now we are going to return this guy as an array, so I can here arrays as list, and then I can have this guy like this. Okay, so we have create, and here compute string, I'm going to, so let's actually make sure the testing, I'm not breaking anything, right, because I'm not using this new method anyplace. In terms of so for compute sum, we're going to actually create another one called compute sum with list of string, list of string, and you should actually receive list of strings. So here I'm going to say list string And here we should just use number strings, return number strings as a list of. Okay. All right. So let's make sure that nothing is broken. Now let's see whether we can actually use. So here, remove delimiters. So here I'm going to use remove delimiters of, and then compute sum as a string. So here I'm going to have this guy, and let's see whether things are still working. Okay, so things are still working. So I should be able to remove this guy, and in fact, it, the Eclipse tells me that this is not being used. So we remove that and compute. Yeah, so this one should not be used either, right? So let's just comment this guy out, and nothing is broken. And let's save the change. Okay, so we can now remove that guy as well. Okay, and then remove this line. And this is just too long, so we're gonna just use refactor as a remove delimiters as before. Okay, so that's good. Save the change. It still works. And this guy computes some with list of strings. Again, we are going to refactor so that names of the string is names of the method is just a compute sum. Okay, and save the change. Things still work. So we are not using list of string. Rather than the array of list. So usage of the list is a lot more flexible because you can actually, add an item and things like that without being concerned about the fixed size of the array. Okay, so that could be one another refactoring you can do. So a couple of other suggestions of refactoring. So instead of actually sending this, using this guy, the suggestion is using collections and the empty list. So this seems to be a lot better. Okay, so that's better. Okay, and also here, this doesn't really describe what it does, right? So maybe I could actually refactor this guy, giving some kind of method describing what it does. The if it contains is actually is it negative number. Okay, so this gives you a better description in terms of what it does, rather than this guy. Somebody has to really read this code to figure out what's going on. So here, this is more descriptive, right? What else to be refactored? So I think it's actually reasonably well refactored. Okay, so let's